All right, welcome back to the Xano521 podcast. My name is Mitch McKinney, and I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, and the owner of Xano521 Concrete Coatings.
You're digging deep, Mitch.
Mr. Jay Bryant. At Xano521, we are committed to transforming the spaces where you live, work, and play. We serve all of Central Florida, from Orlando all the way up to St. Augustine. And so thank you so much for tuning in today. Before we jump into today's topic, today's episode, we ask that you please just quickly, if you would, do us a huge favor and just like or subscribe to this channel on YouTube or on whichever platform you're tuning in with. That would be a huge help and support to us. So please do that. Jay, at Xano521, we do a lot of coating projects. We do residential, we do commercial work. Give us some examples of some of the residential projects that we've done and we do.
So we've done everything within a home, from the pool decks, driveways, garages, sidewalks, patios, outbuildings, pretty anything that's got concrete on it. We've done the inside of homes. We've done entire floors inside a home, countertops. There's all kinds of applications. As long as it's concrete, we're going to coat it.
Concrete, we're good. So on the residential side, so many options. We also do a lot of commercial work. Give me some examples of some commercial projects.
We've done a handful of kitchens. Kitchens are a lot of fun. It makes it's just beautiful inside the kitchen, easy to clean. Makes it a little bit more slip resistant than some tiles that are traditional in there. So kitchens are great. Warehouses, hangars.
We've done some elevator pads,
elevator pads,
landings.
different places, pump stations. I mean, different areas.
Again, the key is the concrete.
Concrete.
So if you've got concrete, we can coat it.
We can coat it.
Let's just say someone has a project and that they want some concrete that they would like coated. What's the best way to get in contact with us?
It's always best just to go to our website first, Xano521.com, Xano521.com, and from there you can submit a form. Our office will reach out to you, or you can get our phone number right off there and just call us directly.
Yep. We'll give you that information again at the end of the podcast, but I just wanted to make sure people understood kind of what we do. And we serve Orlando all the way up to St. Augustine. So if you're tuning in, there's a good chance that we can come and we can give you a free quote.
Free quote.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We've talked a lot about a lot of things in the concrete world. Today, I want us to talk just a few minutes about moisture. So moisture that comes from above, which we would typically think of as rain. You also got sprinklers and stuff like that.
Condensation, yeah.
Yep, condensation. But I also want us to talk about some of the issues that come from below. I know in previous episodes we've talked a little bit about moisture barriers and moisture issues, and so I want to make sure that customers understand what that means, because there's in Florida there's a chance that could be an issue, and so if you don't know exactly what it is, and sometimes you're like, am I just getting taken advantage of or whatever? So so let's talk about moisture that comes from below.
Okay.
Can you give us a little insight of how that happens or why that would happen?
Sure. As I mentioned before, previously, all concrete has moisture. It needs to have moisture. That's part of the integrity of the concrete surface or the concrete itself. So what we need to determine is it got too much moisture to coat. Okay. We do that with a Tramex moisture meter specifically designed for testing moisture in the concrete. Okay. And what we look for is a 5.5% or less moisture content, which is about 3/4 of the way down, 3/4 of an inch down into.
So we put this meter actually on the concrete.
On the concrete. It gives us a reading. We do this in multiple places because you might have an area that's drier than the other areas. But you're going to get some moisture. We just want to make sure it doesn't exceed the limits for installing our system. If it exceeds the limit, this is where we need to figure out what's going on here. Is this a moisture-driven issue where the moisture is coming up from the bottom and it's going to continue to press through? Right. Or is it just the dew point is off from, and we got condensation on the surface? Yep. If it's a dew point on the surface, no big deal. We can either wait a little bit of time, put some fans in it, maybe come back the next day, leave the garage door open, or maybe we just had a whole spout of rain like we did a few weeks ago. We had, I think, 12 inches of rain in a week.
Just in case you didn't know, in Florida,
it rains.
It rains a lot.
Especially in the summers. So we do have to deal with the rain issues. If it's a moisture from the top, it's not a big deal. It just takes a little time. If it's a moisture-driven issue, which, again, we have a test that will tell us the difference. Yeah. Now we have to determine, is this going to dry out naturally? Is it because we just had a bunch of rain? Right. Maybe the back of the house, it doesn't have a good flow to divert the water away from it. It's going under the slab and then wicking up through it. or is it just you're just living on a swamp like Florida? It's a
Yeah.
lot of water
Yeah,
down here,
exactly.
and it's going to constantly pull up. If that's the case, no problem. We can fix it. Unfortunately, we hope to catch that during our assessment, but obviously we can't always. It's
Yeah.
not always a perfect science. But on the day of install, we need to know. So once we test on the day of install, if we find that there's a moisture-driven issue, then we're going to have to do a moisture mitigation system, which means one additional step that we have to apply another product on there to stop it.
So on the front end, when we have an estimator out there, they're going to test the concrete. They're going to get a reading. If there's an issue that we detect then, we'll let you know.
Right.
But if not, we still do another test at the time of install just to confirm, because what happens if there's too much moisture and we put the system down, what happens?
The process is going to fail. So what's going to end up happening is most likely you're either going to get some peeling or delamination of that product, or you'll see bubbles start to form in the surface of the coating, sometimes within a couple of days, sometimes within a couple of weeks, if we apply with too much moisture.
Yeah.
Now, if we apply it and the moisture is good, the likelihood of future moisture coming up and push on it is low.
Right.
But if the hydrostatic pressure becomes too high, it could still push through the surface later.
So just so I'm tracking here, delamination and bubbles are not good things.
They're not good things. Yeah, they don't look good. They don't last. It's terrible.
Okay. So let's just say that I do have a moisture issue, that the moisture is too high in the concrete, and you said a moisture mitigation system. Like I've heard some companies call that, we need to apply a moisture barrier.
Moisture barrier.
And maybe people out there have heard like, hey, your concrete's too wet, we need a moisture barrier. What does that mean? How's it applied? What are the implications to the overall product or process?
So for us now, which is very exciting for us, for many years we've had to use a moisture barrier that required us to profile your concrete like we do in the process. We do it with a different diamond to make it a little rougher, and then we apply a moisture barrier. We have to let that cure for at least 12 hours, and then we have to come back and rough that up and sand it because it dries really hard, cures very hard at the surface. We'll come back and sand it, and then we apply our system. Remember we talked about our manufacturer, Pentac, being very innovative.
Yeah.
So they've actually come out with a great product now that we can actually apply that moisture barrier, and then within about 2 to 4 hours, we can go straight on top of that without having to wait until the next day and sand it and then apply it. So now we can just apply right over that in 2 to 4 hours, and it has a phenomenal moisture mitigation. It has up to 26 pounds of pressure to hold back per square inch, which is incredible within the industry.
So a couple questions for you. So let's just say in my garage or driveway, there's 1,000 square feet, but there's only one spot or one area that has moisture issues. Are you going to just put that moisture barrier on that one spot, or do you have to put it across the whole thing?
Yeah, unfortunately what happens is if you just have one area that's got moisture, if I just protect that area or mitigate that area, that moisture is just going to take that path of least resistance to another area. So we end up having to do that whole area. Now, driveways, different from garages. Garages are typically poured in one big slab and they have saw-cut joints. Driveways are poured in separate slabs, and there's usually a bigger gap. So we could get away with potentially just doing one slab of your driveway and not having any future issues.
Okay. So that's one question. Second question is, because it's requiring more product, I'm guessing that that's not just built into the cost, right? Like there's an additional cost if the moisture barriers needed?
Yeah, absolutely. If we catch this up front, we're obviously going to put that into our quote. This is one of the very few times that we'll ever have to go to a customer, when we on install day and say, hey, look, you come check this out. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it's never fun, having to tell the customer, look, your concrete's got an issue here, and we show them, and then we usually try to cut them the best deal possible just to cover the product in a little bit of time to get that on there, because we hope to catch it up front. Yeah,
that's never a great conversation, but it's a necessary one, because again, this is an investment. You don't want us to come in and put something down knowing that there's a high chance it's going to fail, because then you're going to have to grind it, start all over, and eventually you're going to have to put a moisture barrier down at some point if there's real moisture. Okay. All right, so I think we've covered the moisture that comes from below. Thank you for that. What about moisture from above? So we've talked about how the top coat is non-porous. So nothing's getting through it, which would include rain, sprinklers, water. So I think one question I think we get a lot is it looks great, but is it slippery? And how do we, if it is, is there ways to kind of mitigate and minimize that kind of
stuff? So it is not porous, so any water that gets on top is not going to soak in. So if you notice concrete, when you put water on it, it gets dark and then it slowly soaks in and then it turns back to gray as it dries out. Well, because the surface is non-porous, the water is going to sit on it until the air just evaporates it off. So you're going to have a wetter surface longer with a coating system like this on there, which means that wet surfaces are always more slippery. So what we typically do, all outside project, it's mandatory, it's not a choice that we give the customer. We're always going to add gator bite to the top coat, and we're going to broadcast silica sand as we do our final back roll on that top coat so that you have good grip. We make it slip resistant. It meets all ADA standards for slip resistance, but it is important to note that if you're out there with soaked wet feet that's been in the pool for hours and you get out on a surface, it can be a little bit slippery, and just use caution like you would even on concrete. They can be slippery.
Like nothing is slip proof.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about we do have some additives that we put in the top coat. That gator bite's kind of like a clear sand, right?
Yeah, so gator bite's a powder that we put in the top coat, and as it cures, as it gets wet, it swells up and creates little invisible, you can't really see it unless you're really looking, little small texture on the surface of the top coat. That combined with the silica sand that we put in there that gets encapsulated in that top coat gives you a good grip. But you know, pools, I mean, you go to any public pool, there's always signs that say what? Don't run, right? I mean, so again, always be careful on any surface when you're barefooted especially.
Now that gator bite, that slip resistant texture that we put in there, is there a cost involved with that, or is that included?
We just include that in the price. There's no cost in that.
Okay, that's good. If someone is having issues and they're having slip issues, is that something that we could come out after the fact and test and do something about, or is it kind of like you're kind of just stuck with it?
I mean, we can. If it's a major issue, if there was an install error on our part and we didn't put enough slip resistant in it, we can mitigate that by sanding that top coat, just roughing it up a little bit, adding another top coat with additional slip resistant properties in that. But again, it's going to have to be an installation issue, and our guys are pretty well trained not to let that happen.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up. That's going to be our next episode.
Okay.
And we're going to just be talking hypothetical, right? Because we never have issues.
No, never have
product
issues.
But next episode, we're going to talk about what happens if there's an issue after the product gets installed. What do we do? What can we repair? What's warranted? What's not? How do we do that whole process? So that's coming up on the next episode of the Xano521 podcast. If you have questions or you have a project that you would like for us to come out and give you a free quote on, you can certainly visit our website at Xano521.com. That's Xano 521.com. When you go there, you'll be able to learn all kinds of stuff about our process, our products. You'll be able to see all of the jobs that we have recently completed. And you can also reach out to us and schedule that appointment for us to come out and look at your project. So make sure that you do that and check that out. And we hope that you'll join us next time when we get into the hypothetical.
That there's a problem.
That there's some kind of problem, because that is when you really know what kind of company you're dealing with. So make sure and tune in next time on the Xano521 podcast. We'll see you then.
Ciao.